Could the Baltimore Ravens add a star Arizona Cardinals wide receiver to their team in the 2023 offseason after the unfortunate injury to Kyler Murray? We talk about that, the Ravens and Steelers game, the Ravens and Browns game coming up in week 15 and more next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostraker of Ravens Wire. We're here as always on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for tuning in today, making us your first listen of the day. If you're available on all platforms, including on YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline, as you covered this season, with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Here today, it is Wednesday midweek edition. We'll be talking about the Ravens and Steelers game in week 14, their Browns matchup in week 15, get into some mailbag questions as well. But I do want to talk today with Spencer Schultz of Baltimore Beatdown, our guest, about the Arizona Cardinals a little bit. And I know it's kind of a pivot of 180, but Spencer, the Ravens, I know they've wanted a wide receiver for a long time. A lot of fans have wanted that pure number one guy. Now, there was a super unfortunate injury that happened to Kyler Murray on Monday Night Football. He tears his ACL. He's done for the season. The Cardinals have been out of it for a couple weeks now, it feels like, though. But it feels like the Cliff Kingsbury era is coming to an end. They might try to blow things up, and maybe that means DeAndre Hopkins could be back on the trade block just a couple years after Arizona acquired him. Now, the key part in this is the fact that the Ravens were actually in on him during the 2020 offseason right before draft. I think it was actually on draft night. The news broke that the Ravens were in on him, and everyone was like, oh, I could have gone without knowing that because the Ravens didn't get him. But do you feel like, Spencer, Baltimore could make a move for DeAndre Hopkins if he's available in the offseason?
Well, they sniffed around him a couple of years ago, and I know that a lot of Ravens fans hate that for whatever reason, but they tend to fixate on players, especially veterans. We've heard them talk about Roquan Smith since before the NFL draft years ago when he was selected. Yannick Ngakoue was someone that they had mentioned several times and talked to several times. They go trade for him. So I think once they kind of lock their sights on someone, they tend to go after them continuously whenever they're available. And at this point, you look at the Cardinals, you look at what they tried to do, and tried to use that Red Raider spread offense, that quick RPO game, and didn't really turn into a lot of wins for DeAndre Hopkins. He was able to put up some prolific stats. He's having a good year this year off of his suspension. And at this point, how much more do you think he wants in terms of statistical production versus making some money and winning some games? So I think that he fits perfectly into what they need. They need a receiver that they can put on the outside that can go win when at the last second, be able to have Lamar Jackson when he's not sure where to go, doesn't know who to rely on, can depend on DeAndre Hopkins to break and make a play on the ball, and that it's not going to be picked off, let alone have him go make a ridiculous play where if you put it where he can get it, he tends to make those more than most receivers over the last decade or so do. So I think that he's a realistic option that's a fit that they've been interested in the past, and it fits what the Ravens do. They don't like to overspend. They have never traded a first-round pick for a player, and they would have had to trade a first-round pick for a player to beat out the Cardinals' offer. So they don't do it. They don't want to trade a first, and they don't want to go pay top of market for someone like that. So to be able to bring in Hopkins, potentially rework a deal, have him try and come win some games in Baltimore, I think would be a fantastic move, segueing out of the Marquise Brown years and into hopefully Rashad Bateman recovering a little bit. And that takes some of the pressure off of Rashad Bateman to come back quickly and, be full force immediately. It's going to be different. We've heard so much about that Liz Frank injury from Jimmy Smith, from Marquise Brown, from guys like that. It changes the way you feel. It's a different feel. It's something you have to adjust to in your game. It's something that can make you have bad days as well. So I think taking pressure off of Bateman is imperative, and DeAndre Hopkins will do exactly that.
Yeah, so if it does happen, I think it'd be a home run for the Ravens. Obviously, we still have a little ways to go here in this regular season, bigger goals for this year before getting to the offseason. But if it were to happen, Spencer, do you think that it would make sense both contractually for the Ravens and draft capital-wise? Obviously, Baltimore doesn't have that second-round pick this year after they traded it away for Roquan Smith. So do you feel like a third-round pick would get it done? A third-round pick and a player would maybe get it done for the Cardinals?
Something definitely could in that sense, but I don't think the Ravens want to go through the second and third round without drafting. So it would need to be a strange situation possibly, or Hopkins kind of wanting to get free agency or something like that. I don't think with them not having that second round pick that they're going to be willing to do so. If they extend Lamar Jackson, I think that could be a little bit of a different story because you are going to add a first round pick. The Ravens, it also wouldn't be surprising to see them, and it does take two to tango, but it's a late first round pick. I'm sure the Ravens would love to, in this class that is supposed to be another deep class, just like last year, trade back from, let's say, the 26th, 27th, 28th pick, and hopefully the 32nd pick, but for them to trade back into the 40s and then trade up from, the end of the third round a little bit, meet in the middle in that sense. So I don't think that would be surprising either, and that kind of helps you meet in the middle or cut the difference. So don't think they would love to go trade another pick, but if it's a third for DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, the likelihood of that third round pick helping you in that short window where if they do extend Lamar Jackson, that you can maximize output in terms of dollars is a good idea. So the Ravens do love to build through the draft. It would be atypical to see them do so. I'm curious to see if they extend Roquan Smith still. I think it would, regardless of how well he's played, be somewhat of a dumb move to trade a second rounder and a fifth to go get a player for half a season. So I would love to see the Ravens extend Roquan Smith still. And again, if they extend Lamar Jackson, then go try and win it quick.
Right. And we've seen for the Ravens and these other teams, the Bills go out there and get Stephon Diggs. The Cardinals obviously go out there and get DeAndre Hopkins. I think Baltimore, if Hopkins is made available, he is someone who is not going to break the bank in terms of draft capital. Maybe like a DK Metcalf would have, or Stephon Diggs did, obviously. Hopkins was traded for a second round pick the first time around in David Johnson, which I know was not wonderful value for the Texans going back. But if you can get him for a third and a player or something like that, I think it'd be a home run move. He would make this offense so much more explosive, and I think just add another element and another weapon. But Spencer, the Ravens have traded with the Cardinals recently. They acquired the 25th pick in the 2022 draft, and they ended up moving Marquise Brown to the Arizona Cardinals. I think actually they traded a third round pick with him, and it turned into, was it Majai Sanders? I think the Majai Sanders from Cincinnati was that third round pick. Now we're still really early. We're not even a season in to that deal. Marquise Brown has dealt with an injury in Arizona, but Tyler Linderbaum has come in and played great. So early returns on that deal, Spencer. Do you think Baltimore is the winner of that trade?
Yeah, I do think that they're the winner. I don't really think even Tyler Linderbaum matters in this scenario. I think that the value you're getting back for a receiver that has had a foot issue, ends up having that happen again a little bit in hindsight, isn't that kind of top dog, and someone that you weren't going to pay and is nearing that point where not trading him. If the Ravens didn't trade him this year, I don't think they do get a first round pick for him. Someone wanted a couple of years of control. So being able to go get that end of first round, kind of late first, second round value and go get another player that did turn out to be a starter for you and someone that's played well, especially this past weekend. I think that's all great and dandy. So I don't think that too many teams would be willing to trade a first for Marquise Brown, especially at this point in time as well. So he was pretty dynamite early in the year, was able to do some nice things, but still isn't really a complete receiver in the sense that he can kind of be a cornerstone player for you. You're not going to pay him what he wants to be paid. I think he would get paid something. He kind of reminds me in ways a little bit of Deontay Johnson in terms of his ability to impact games, but not really be a consistent kind of season maker for you in that sense. So I like the value a lot. Linderbaum they end up getting, who has been a controversial kind of pick, controversial kind of situation. It did at the time feel like, hey, if you're drafting a center and a safety, didn't really feel like they were trying to maximize the end of Lamar Jackson's rookie contract. So those are more long-term moves, and you hope that Linderbaum can be 5-year plus, 7-year plus starter for you, someone that you can be a core foundational player in terms of the quote-unquote Raven way, just like Kyle Hamilton coming from Iowa and Notre Dame. It doesn't get more Raven than that, I don't think, in terms of the Ravens way. So with that being said, sure, they go get a first-round pick in terms of that value, and we're able to get someone that they really found as a fit for what they like to do philosophically and culturally.
Yeah, and the Ravens have had success with those Iowa offensive linemen. Marshall Yanda being another one of those guys inducted into the Ring of Honor. Super, super well-deserved for him. But let's wrap up with one more DeAndre Hopkins question of this segment, Spencer. If he was made available by the Cardinals, based off all the needs you think Baltimore's going to have in the 2023 offseason, would he be your top choice for Baltimore to go out there and get?
Probably. I don't know what other receivers are available. It looks like as things stand, it's not going to be a class that even has a Corey Davis or Christian Kirk. And funny enough, kind of looking at the free agent classes of years past, Christian Kirk is probably the player who's playing closest to the value of his contract. And it was mocked very widely. So I think that we get these ideas of who is going to do what and what it'll be like in free agency when they change scenery. The receiver market is so inflated. I think that's why the Ravens have chosen not to participate in it pretty much. And doesn't seem like anyone else is coming available. I think it's a lot of the same kind of names. Juju Smith-Schuster, Sammy Watkins is a free agent again. Those kinds of guys, maybe a Kendrick Bourne or something like that. So maybe there is someone who's cut. Curtis Samuel was another player that has played decently well. Corey Davis has been okay, still hasn't played at his value. Someone that I was huge on and wanted the Ravens to go after and do think would be making a difference for them, especially as things stand now. Can never tell what the butterfly effect would be if they had gotten him last offseason. But ultimately, I think that Hopkins is, again, a player that they want, a player that they have shown desire in, and someone that they will attempt to bring in. But they don't want to overspend. They will not go give up those assets. They will not go overpay. They don't want to go pay $23 million, $25 million a year to get $15, $17 million of play. And I always refer back to Over the Cap's valuations, overthecap.com. They use a really nice valuation. It's a nice base, and I think I don't tend to find myself disagreeing with it terribly. And it's basically combining how many snaps a player plays, their PFF grade, and a couple other metrics like touchdowns for a running back or yards per carry or things of that nature relevant to the position. And you'd be hard-pressed to go find a player on the Ravens roster that is a disparity in value. Guys like Kevin Zeitler are playing above their contract. Calais Campbell, Justin Houston, Marlon Humphrey's valuation is right around what he's being paid. Mark Andrews' valuation is slightly over what he's being paid. So it's a rare thing, and sometimes that does backfire. They let Matt Judon go, someone that I think was underappreciated and in a different role in Wink Martindale's defense, who now has guys like Azeez Ojulari and Kayvon Thibodeau, or talented pass rushers who are similarly not going to put up huge sack numbers. That's not the way Wink Martindale plays defense, but still was a really high impact player. And now we see him able to go change schemes a little bit and go be that huge impact player. So it doesn't always work. Sometimes it does bite them a little bit, but they're happy to take their third round comp pick at times if they can, but they don't really have that going on right now. I don't know who they would get a big comp pick for now other than Roquan Smith. But again, I don't think trading that asset immediately for a second round and a fifth round pick and getting a late third back a year after is really equivalent in any way, shape, or form. So all those factors combined, look at what they did with Orlando Brown. They didn't want to wait around for that and go get a third round pick from that. Same thing with Marquise Brown. They want to get that activity a little bit more so and return what they can in that sense.
Yeah, and I think, look, if the Ravens go out there and get a DeAndre Hopkins, you have that Lamar to DeAndre Hopkins connection, hopefully, which I think would be amazing. You add, obviously, the talent like Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman coming back. It makes the offense super explosive, and I think it would be a great move for them to make. But coming up in the second segment, we'll be diving into the Ravens and Steelers matchup, recapping that, talking about the run game, those linebackers, and more. So be sure to stay tuned. We still have a lot to talk about here on the show. But first, this episode is sponsored by LinkedIn. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn Jobs has a ton of positive things that it can do for your business. And it's easy to create a free job post. You just add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools you can use like screening questions that make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience. So you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and who you'd like to hire. And it's really important to finish the year strong, and the right team member might be able to help you do that. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one, delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And this episode is brought to you by Audible. Audible is releasing a slate of new football podcasts that we're sure you're going to love. That's why you'll be able to find a sneak peek of Think Like a Champion available right now as a bonus episode on Locked On Presents. Think Like a Champion is a brand new podcast from Russell Wilson and Audible. Russ is a champion on the field, but off of it, we rarely know the grind on the path to greatness. Russell Wilson, alongside co-hosts Harry Wilson and the late Trevor Maurer, dig into how high-performance athletes and artists and leaders push the boundaries of their potential. Head over to Locked On Presents for a sneak peek of Think Like a Champion, or catch the full series available anywhere you get your podcasts, available everywhere now. Audible, get in the game. We're back, our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Spencer Schultz. And Spencer, a huge divisional win for the Ravens in Week 14 against Pittsburgh, 16-14. It was that classic Ravens-Steelers, the grinded-out game. But this offense, I mean, speaking of Tyler Linderbaum, the offensive line, I thought, played phenomenal football in this game, paving the way for J.K. Dobbins, who averaged 8 yards per carry in his return. Gus Edwards was right up in that 5 yards per carry range as well. I mean, how big was it for the Ravens to kind of find this run game against what I've been saying, a Steelers run defense that came into this game as a top 10 unit in that regard?
It was imperative, and the Ravens needed someone to make one single play. That was my kind of pre-game preview that we did on Baltimore Beatdown last week. Someone has to take the pressure off the quarterback and generate a field-flipping explosive play, whether that is a return defensively, a special teams return, whether that's making a play after the catch, a guy like Isaiah Likely or Demarcus Robinson or a Mark Andrews we've seen do it, or is it getting J.K. Dobbins back, who ends up reeling off a 44-yard run? And what J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards are able to do, as opposed to, and I really like Kenyon Drake's contributions, considering, where he's at in his career and what they needed from him. I think, he has helped them in many ways, but their ability to press the line of scrimmage and force second-level defenders and third-level defenders, linebackers and safeties, to get caught in the wash before deviating from their path and setting up blocks in that sense is something that, and I think we heard Patrick Queen say today at at the Ravens press conference, it might have been Ronnie Stanley. Those two backs start on any team, no matter who is the other running back. If Saquon Barkley is your running back, J.K. Dobbins is still getting touches, a lot of them. If, Alvin Kamara is your running back, you're going to give Gus Edwards 10 carries a game still. So those running backs and their ability to create explosive plays, but also turn 3 yards into 5 yards, turn 5 yards into 8 yards, keep Baltimore out of negative game scripts and negative down and distances, and, remaining balanced as opposed to being one-dimensional is really imperative. Dobbins consistently put the Ravens into second and short off of first down runs, or second and medium. And then that field flipping play was something to cherish against the Pittsburgh Steelers. J.K. Dobbins has absolutely destroyed the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's only played them twice now. I believe he has 30 carries for about 230 yards and a couple scores. So plus on top of it, mentioning scoring, Dobbins now inside the 5-yard line has had 16 touches in his career. He scored touchdowns 11 times. That is insane. That is a true testament to the leverage that he possesses, the idea of what leverage he's seeing defensively on top of the physical skill set. A shorter player that's extremely patient but possesses the burst to go close on the end zone, to go, set up his blocks and then attack with that, low pad level due to him being a shorter player and the explosiveness that he possesses in terms of athleticism, and find his way into the end zone. So he is a touchdown maker. He is someone who can really alleviate some of the stress and pressure and anxiety that the Ravens have had in the red zone. And we saw him immediately do it. And it's really a joy to see. And knowing that he's still not even close to the same level of explosiveness that he was in 2020 is kind of mind-blowing in many ways. His ability to go generate a 44-yard run, but somehow everyone knows that's a touchdown every single time in 2020 if he gets a hole like that. So generating explosive plays is what this offense has been missing. You see him do it. You see Gus Edwards starting to be able to deviate on those zone wrap concepts and go right around the outside of his blockers, bust it up to the sideline, lay a stiff arm, go get 16 yards, 20 yards. So being able to generate those plays in the run game, someone who's not named Lamar Jackson, I should say, generate those plays in the run game. And guys like Deshaun Jackson and Demarcus Robinson just helping their quarterback out, sitting down. You see Deshaun Jackson just kind of slowly, quickly realize that everything's moving and slowly drift to the sideline, remain calm. He's not in between jogging and sitting down. He's just slowly pacing at the same rate to the sideline. That was an explosive pass play. That was, I think, the third longest completion in terms of air yards of Tyler Huntley's career, if I'm not mistaken. So with that being said, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, welcome sights. Gus Edwards can go convert short power situations with the best of them, and J.K. Dobbins adds that explosive element that keeps you out of those negative situations and flips the field from time to time.
Yeah, they were great. And Dobbins, 15 carries. That was the most in 2022 for him. He actually has never eclipsed 15 carries in a game. He's had this, I think, was his third game of 15 carries. So he hasn't had to be that 20, 25 plus carry per game guy. They can use Edwards in tandem with him. And I think it really helps both guys. So speaking of tandem, Spencer, that Patrick Queen, Roquan Smith duo has been everything and more that Baltimore could have imagined when they acquired Roquan Smith a couple months ago. Both players finished with 6 tackles. Both players finished with an interception, and Patrick Queen assists Roquan Smith on a sack. So they're working together in everything they do. You have Marcus Williams coming back and making an impact, another interception for him. You could immediately feel his presence. The Ravens run defense, another exceptional performance. They've been great all season. 3.3 yards per carry allowed to the Steelers. What'd you make of that defensive game for them?
It just showed the vision that the Ravens have had and clearly have wanted to get on the football field. They want linebackers that can be kept clean from their front. They have guys like Brent Urban, Broderick Washington, Justin Madubuike, Calais Campbell, Travis Jones eating blocks up front and letting those two linebackers play on a string. In the run game, in the screen game, the ability for Queen and Smith, who are similar caliber of athletes and not, terribly different in terms of size, while Smith is a little built a little more like a traditional linebacker. Watching the way that they're able to interchange and for Patrick Queen to go shoot a gap to kind of force offensive linemen to have to shuffle and not get to the second level so that Roquan Smith can have an area to go fill and wrap around. They are really playing on a string together, and you can watch them like a yin and a yang. When one is aggressive, the other is calm and sorts the play out. When both of them sift together, they stay completely parallel and will be able to really take advantage of 4 gaps for a running back to have to sort through. And each one of them being able to split multiple gaps has been something that's really thwarted those inside run concepts. They are the best run defense in football since they acquired Roquan Smith. That's even without their really star nose tackle in terms of being a run defender. So what they're doing without Michael Pierce, something else that was brought up, I think, at the press conference today for Patrick Queen, but what they're doing without their star nose tackle still is a huge testament to their defensive line. And, not to rip on a Josh Bynes or a Malik Harrison, but having someone that is that with it in the run game, that astute and on top of it, and able to go make plays in the pass game, be able to go pick balls off, be able to, move quickly, sort, understand what route concepts they're facing, where space is going, where quarterbacks are attacking. Having that spine where you're able to have the 3-tech, the nose tackle that can eat blocks, having athletic linebackers that can run sideline to sideline or quickly diagnose and get downhill. And then you have guys like Marcus Williams, Kyle Hamilton, Chuck Clark, Geno Stone. Having that as the spine of your defense makes teams really have to work to get the ball to the outside, to be creative, to pull out everything that they have and more, really have to be perfect. And for them to lose a game, Trevor Lawrence had to go throw a seed to Zay Jones, 22 yards. Zay Jones has to go make a fingertip diving catch. And then Marvin Jones has to go somehow force his shin on the ground at the same time as his toes, but not his knee. So you really have to execute at a high level if you're going to beat this defense. And I think a large part of that is because you have guys over the middle of the field that are either eating blocks, occupying space, or running balls down over top like Marcus Williams.
Yeah, in that game, Spencer, is there anything more peak Ravens Steelers in that clip that was shared of the Ravens waving their towels in the faces of the Steelers fans to renegade pumping themselves up?
No, there really isn't. And Calais Campbell, it's a shame that he wasn't a Raven for longer, but with a couple years here now, you can see what being a Raven has meant to him and how much this rivalry still means to the Ravens, and that they practice that way. They play renegade. They get themselves excited for it. And they execute better when that song comes on in Pittsburgh so often, especially on the defensive side of the football. It feels like they've leaned into that a ton. And I don't think they've let the Steelers really have a big day against them offensively in quite some time. Their offense has been stifled at times, but the Ravens defense has been on top of it. Campbell's block kick, I think, was one of the signature moments of the Ravens-Steelers rivalry, especially, let's say, in the last half decade or so.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was Baltimore's first win against Pittsburgh since 2019, I believe. So it was big for them to be able to go out there and get that win. But the Ravens have another big divisional matchup coming up in week 15 against Cleveland. We'll talk about that game and answer some questions about the red zone offense and more. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a ton to dive into on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is sponsored by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season of basketball and even the World Cup. They've got it all over at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website and let your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back rounding out Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher here with Spencer Schultz still as we round out this Wednesday edition of Locked On Ravens. And Spencer, the Ravens game against Cleveland was flexed from Sunday to Saturday. Do you like that flex?
Yeah, I do. I think it's fun. I really love Saturday football. I think that going to an NFL game on a Saturday is really a different experience from going on a Sunday, having kind of Friday to, unwind, relax. And then if it's a 4:25 or a night game on a Saturday, it's really a weekend experience in that sense, as opposed to a Sunday experience. So I think it's super fun. It's, the ability of college football, getting to the playoffs and having some off time before bowl games where they're able to go do so and take advantage of it. The NFL has promised that they would never impede upon high school football, but that promise is being broken next year for Black Friday. So that's going to be an interesting one as well. But I think having games on Fridays or Saturdays is really a different element and is going to lead to some bad decisions, some fun decisions, things of that nature, wherever city it is. In Cleveland, they like to go have a good time a little bit. I did see that tickets are about $8 right now on SeatGeek, so not sure how full that stadium is going to be as the Browns are reeling, but I do love it for the fact of enjoying the game on the weekend and not having the Sunday scaries kick in shortly after.
I think it's a cool little wrinkle that you have with Saturday football. So I'm excited for it personally, but I know, Spencer, all eyes are on Baltimore's quarterback situation right now. The Ravens did practice, or it was a walkthrough, but they have a practice report estimation they put out where Lamar Jackson did not practice. Tyler Huntley would have been limited, but John Harbaugh did say he's still in the concussion protocol. So, Spencer, let's say that Lamar Jackson and Tyler Huntley both can't go in this game. How confident are you in Anthony Brown to go out there and play mistake-free and do his job while probably still leaning on the run game for the Baltimore offense?
Yeah, I think if you can find an over-under on Ravens rushing attempts anywhere around 37, 38, 39, I would hammer that if Anthony Brown is the starter. That's going to be the game plan. The Browns now missing Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, their top kind of run-defending linebacker, is going to be out. The Browns have struggled against the run over the last couple of years under Joe Woods. They've struggled against the Ravens against the run. J.K. Dobbins has had big games against them. So I would anticipate that the Ravens have 40-plus carries if Anthony Brown's a starter again, and they're going to boot him a little bit. They're going to ask him to make some safe throws, try and get him some one-on-ones to go float balls just to threaten enough. And his main job is to manage the football game. And what I think is underrated, especially in a Greg Roman offense, is conducting motion, ball fakes, making sure that you're operating and opening to the correct side, the pacing of snapping the football relative to motions, things of that nature. So there is a lot more that goes into it other than throwing the football, especially in that offense. And Brown, someone that is a little bit athletic, he did throw up the Steamin' Willie Beeman picture. He does wear the do-rag just like him. He's one number off at 13, and Steamin' Willie Beeman wore 12, but he's even got the little cross over his eye or under his eye on his cheek. So if he can go channel those Steamin' Willie Beeman vibes, make a couple plays with his leg, make a couple throws, I think the Ravens can definitely win this game against Deshaun Watson and the Browns, who are now down to their fourth-string center. Their run game is stifled. Deshaun Watson's having some mechanical issues. We have seen teams somehow kind of find their stride against the Ravens over the last season and a half here. But I think that the Ravens are going to be in a good spot with guys like Marcus Williams and Roquan Smith added, and the trouble that they've given the Browns at times. I think that this is going to be another hard-nosed AFC North football game. And with Dobbins back, Edwards back, Williams back, Smith back, Ravens are in a good situation. So hopefully Tyler Huntley is able to go do it. I think he was playing a decent game and was able to make a few throws here and there, able to move the chains. He can spray the ball to the outside a little bit, but Anthony Brown's not, maybe not a huge drop-off necessarily. And this offense can run itself in these kinds of games, and with the talent that they have in their offensive line, with their talented running backs being back and those defensive players I mentioned.
Yeah, and speaking of Anthony Brown, I'm gonna put you back in a draft mode a little bit, Spencer, because Finley Halliday asks, can we get some more info on Anthony Brown? What kind of quarterback is he? What does he bring to the offense, etc.? So maybe when you were looking at quarterbacks potentially leading up to the draft, or even what you saw in the preseason and training camp from Anthony Brown, what does he bring to Baltimore's offense, and kind of who is he as a player in your eyes?
It's interesting watching Oregon's quarterbacks over the last few years make that leap to the NFL. Their offense is a very quick RPO, throwing game that requires a lot of snap decisions and doesn't maybe always utilize the skill set of some players. We saw Anthony Brown push the ball downfield pretty effectively. He's got some nice touch. I think that he does present maybe a little bit more upside throwing the ball downfield than Tyler Huntley does. He's not a supreme athlete, but he is a mobile quarterback. He can go make some plays. I think that he was prone at Oregon to making some really awful decisions. But again, I think that's a little bit more of a product of Oregon's offense and the timing that's required for a player that maybe didn't fit that skill set or that rhythm or that style as a passer a ton. So I think Anthony Brown, showed a lot of poise. I think he's a confident guy. And as a backup, again, you really can't be built much better as a team than to have an incredibly stout run defense, sharp safeties and DBs for the most part, and a really strong run game that's diverse, that can take advantage of opponents, even if they are really trying to fit the run. So Brown, I would expect, try and manage the game, limit mistakes, the same recipe that we see from Tyler Huntley. But it did look like he was playing a slower pace in a good way. He was a little more calm, a little more under control. They didn't really ask a ton of him, but at the same time, he wasn't getting ahead of himself. He knew if the throw is not there, don't make it. Ball security is major. Don't turn the football over, those kinds of things. He just needs to be a game manager and make a couple throws. And by couple, I mean 5 throws he needs to make that might not be, wide open or something of the sort. So just play within the pace of the game. Let the run game do the work for you. Sell those ball fakes, sell play action hard, and play mistake free in that sense. Don't make rash decisions. Don't let that fight or flight response take over. And I think we'll see Anthony Brown play a nice game and has an opportunity to do as Tyler Huntley's done and probably hang around the NFL, get the pension, and maybe get an opportunity somewhere at some point.
Yeah, so we'll see what Baltimore's quarterback situation does look like leading up to Saturday and obviously on Saturday. But Spencer, a question from Jared V asks, red zone offense, why is it god awful? In my eyes, it's got to be the play calling to be that poor so consistently. And I never blame any one thing on just one thing. So for me, it's not just play calling. It's not just execution too. I think it's a little bit of both. But you have another game against the Steelers. Red zone offense, 1 of 3. And I think it was a little bit more excused this time around because the first time you go deep into Pittsburgh territory, Justin Tucker kicks the field goal and he passes Matt Stover for the all-time scoring lead in Baltimore. So everybody's kind of celebrating that. Then late in the game, they're back in the red zone. They really only need a field goal to get it to 2 possessions. So you're thinking, all right, regardless of if it's a touchdown or a field goal, you're still getting the outcome that you want. But how can the Ravens, Spencer, I know we've talked about it before and plenty of times, but what is the key for them to kind of break this trend and maybe go 66% in the red zone or 75% or even 100% in the red zone scoring touchdowns?
Well, like we previously said, I think J.K. Dobbins unlocks a lot of things. I think that his skill set and his ability to be a running back that can play through contact with strength, as well as possesses enough burst to close on the end zone and rumble through, that 3-yard line area. If you're on the 5, he can get you in. It's not getting to the 3 and then getting to the 2 and then trying to run a little boot or something like that. I did like what the Ravens did in the red zone a little bit more in terms of philosophical play calling or what the concept was. If you're going to reduce yourself in the red zone and get tight splits, tight alignments, bring receivers closer to the formation, then you need to attack horizontally. You're giving them grass on the perimeter, so go attack grass. There is not room, there is not depth vertically because of the end line now. So when you get in those tight alignments, you either want to really attack by running the ball downhill. And if you want to go mano a mano, I see that. But if you're going to throw the ball, don't be trying to throw the ball vertically from tight alignments. Give your quarterback some space. If you're going to do that kind of thing, if you want to run a sweep concept with Devin Duvernay, go tight and then attack the perimeter. Conversely, if you want to spread things out a little bit, then run the ball downhill or throw the ball over the middle. So I don't know that they have a receiver or really have ever liked the idea in general of throwing back shoulder fades or things like that. The analytics community hates back shoulder fades. They say it's the least efficient play you can run really in all of football, other than like a 2nd and 10 run, I think. So ultimately, attack space. If you're going wide, attack the middle of the field, run the ball downhill. If you're going tight, then attack the perimeter and split the field in half for some of these reads or let guys run the full distance of the end zone. The Ravens face so much zone that you need to let receivers work through multiple zones. There's going to be multiple chances. And I think another thing that the Ravens have just generally struggled at, and something you can definitely blame on coaching, blame on Greg Roman, while I don't think they've had that stud receiver, especially with Rashad Bateman going out, a little Freudian slip there, first-round receiver missing time. But with Rashad Bateman out, they don't have a receiver that can go win ISO, They can go do those things. They continue to have new receivers every year. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, okay, Deshaun Jackson and Demarcus Robinson are playing a ton of snaps. Devin Duvernay finally kind of playing a fair amount of snaps, did a little bit last year, but it just feels like they haven't done a good job making their receivers and quarterbacks be on the same page, confidence level in terms of sitting down versus running through zones, reading leverage, breaking the same way, things like that. So do they have a ton of talent? No, absolutely not. They, especially with Rashad Bateman down, do not. But they could do a little better job, making sure that their quarterbacks are reading things the same way and understanding where to sit down and how to not interfere with the spacing of other receivers relative to what they're seeing pre-snap. So that's been a little bit of an issue, especially in the red area. And, Lamar Jackson has gone through phases of trying to be hyper aggressive, resulted in a couple turnovers. Then he doesn't want to do that again. So he gets a little bit more conservative. So trying to put the ball where only a receiver might be able to make a play on the ball, things like that. So maybe they can get out of their head a little bit. Maybe they can return to just using J.K. Dobbins as that battering ram down there in goal to go and go pound the ball, man. I mean, at the end of the day, with Dobbins back, with Ronnie Stanley on the football field, who the Ravens have been a dominant rushing force with Stanley on the field. He's known so widely as a great pass blocker, but the drop-off between him and a Pat McCary in the run game is substantial. Go bully people. Pat Ricard's been coming on strong lately. It's December. It's cold. I think I tweeted earlier and said, if you go look at the 4 teams that would host if the playoffs started this Sunday or this Saturday, the temperature at the 4 home team AFC teams would be like 34 in Buffalo, 40 in Kansas City, 38 in Baltimore, and like 40 in Nashville. It's December. The AFC is cold again, and you need to be able to go run the ball, so go do the thing.
Yeah, I think that for Baltimore, having Dobbins, having Edwards, even Stanley, those 3 make such a difference. But Spencer, I think it's fitting to round out the show with a question about Greg Roman. Comes from Justin, and he says, do you think Greg Roman's employment for the 2023 season would be make or break for Lamar's contract? So if I'm not misinterpreting it, I guess what Justin's asking is if Greg Roman is employed, would Lamar Jackson hold out, or is there a situation where Baltimore doesn't feel like he's a fit for Greg Roman's offense? I mean, what do you think that the tie-in between Lamar Jackson and Greg Roman is for the future?
I think it's like when you're playing NBA 2K and different players have different things that are important to them. With a quarterback and what's been going on and what's been leaked, it feels like if there's 100 points of care about certain things to give out, 95% of them or 95 of those points are the money, are the contract. So we've had leaks. We know that, Jay Glazer's reported that the Ravens basically beat out Kyler Murray's deal, exceeded that, but it wasn't Deshaun Watson's deal. There's been other reports that they basically ran out of time ahead of this season and couldn't really get the guaranteed money sorted out the way that they wanted to. So I think money is the main factor there. Greg Roman, sure. But at this point, I don't think we see Roman back. And I think that if they do extend Lamar Jackson, I don't know. I feel like it works conversely. If they can't extend Lamar Jackson or do plan on trading him, they'll probably hold on to Greg Roman because they can bring in quarterbacks, have a strong run game with Greg Roman, and play that way and lean into that tendency a little bit more versus if you want to commit to Lamar Jackson, you're going to change the way your salary construction and your roster construction are, and you might want to be able to maximize some certain things a little bit more. But I think we often tend to ignore that Lamar Jackson, regardless of his passing ability, is arguably the most dynamic runner over the last decade plus, is one of the most electric runners. I mean, if you watch Barry Sanders run and you watch Lamar Jackson run, you're not talking about players that are in a different, ballpark or universe, so to speak. So he's one of the most electric runners ever, and it feels like we hate it. And it's viewed as a negative, and the fans are tired of it. They want to see him be Patrick Mahomes. And I think Lamar Jackson is still an underrated passer, still does so many things that he doesn't get credit for in terms of processing. And we talk about, he doesn't put the ball on the outside. Well, he does seem to score a lot of points, does seem to win a lot of games for someone that if teams know where the ball is going, then he's still making it happen either way. And again, Greg Roman hasn't had that number one guy. I don't think Greg Roman's yelling, don't bring me A.J. Brown, don't bring me Tyreek Hill. I don't want those guys. I think the Ravens said, hey, can we afford to try and build this thing without having that guy and maybe go draft someone? So they went a little skinny there. And so it's not, that Greg Roman hates that and can't succeed with that. I mean, if they had Tyreek Hill, it would be a different story. It would bring an entirely different element. And they just have not wanted to go do those kinds of things and make that aggressive move. But as we mentioned in the DeAndre Hopkins segment, it feels like when you do finally settle in on what's going to happen with Lamar Jackson, and if they do extend him, then you feel more confident. Okay, we can make a long-term play at receiver. Maybe we see them uncharacteristically kind of leap there, knowing we have the quarterback lockdown. We want to lock down receiver, not have to use our draft picks on it anymore, not keep trying to, chase after that white whale. And then you can go allocate to the offensive line, the defensive line, the secondary, other key positions through the draft to boost the rest of the team up a little bit. But the market resets itself every year. So we get into what can the Ravens afford, what can't they afford. Lamar Jackson signs a contract this year with them. Let's say it does break Deshaun Watson's deal. In 2 or 3 years, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, those guys, it's just a new marker. If Lamar Jackson does it, it sets a trend. And again, I think that's why we've kind of seen this standoff. So to circle all the way back, it's all about money. The Ravens don't want to be the ones that are making it a trend to guarantee players getting paid, $250 million just because the Browns did it. We heard Steve Bisciotti's comments that he doesn't think that's what should be or the case or what should be normal. And I think that if they do end up doing that, it has nothing to do with Greg Roman. It's like, if Lamar Jackson's getting paid $250 million, how much is Greg Roman getting paid? A couple $1 million. It's apples and oranges. And it's something that we fixate on, and we want to blame someone when the Ravens don't win the Super Bowl every year. So the blame goes there. And I think it's a little less relevant than the amount of money that they're paying him.
Yeah, there's still so much to talk about when we talk about Lamar Jackson's contract situation, and there's still plenty to look at when you're talking about just what is going to happen. Is there going to be a franchise tag? Is there going to be a long-term extension? If there is the extension, how's the money going to work out? Guarantees, as you talked about, and front load, back load. So there's a lot, but for right now, the Ravens still have business to take care of. Next up is Week 15 against the Cleveland Browns. So Spencer, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for hopping on today with me. Tell everybody out there what you're working on and where people can find you.
Can find content. I'm whipping up a video about J.K. Dobbins and how he looks much more comfortable and confident and has a better range of motion in his knee and trusts his knees and things of that nature a little bit more so. That'll be all over Baltimore Beatdown, all over Twitter. You can find me on YouTube, Spenny's Football, and all of that good stuff. Same place as usual. Make sure to give Kevin 5 stars. Give the man who gives you the best daily Ravens coverage a little Christmas gift, a little Hanukkah gift, and throw him a 5-star review. Share this podcast with a friend. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you guys next week.
A big shout out to Spencer. Be sure to check out his work. It will all be down in the description below. And if you like the work we do over here at Locked On Ravens, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Also follow along with us in audio form, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. We are daily, so 5 days a week we do put out Ravens content. So updates, analysis, news, and more. We have it here for you Monday through Friday. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. When we get back here tomorrow, we'll be continuing our Ravens coverage, talking about the Ravens and Browns Week 15 matchup and more. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you right back here tomorrow.